Joining us now, Dave Brat, Congressman. Good to have you with us, sir.
Hey, John. Great to be on. Thank you.
Okay, so we just got this new poll out, and here's why I think it's good news, all right? And then I want to get your reaction. I don't know if you've seen it. It has you tied, but here's the good news in it. Every CNU poll that's ever done all skew to the Democrats. So to me, if you're tied, you're in good shape because every one they do oversamples Dems. That's just part of how they do it. So if you're tied, you're probably up by 5. Here's the second thing. You lead independents by 8. Here's the third thing. You've got 4% Republicans that are undecided. What are they undecided about? Those are your votes if you can get them to the polls in 8 days. Number 4, they've got Joe Walton or somebody, the Libertarian, at 4%. He's not going to get 4%. So what happens with the Libertarian vote at this level, at the congressional level, is on election day, it crumbles because people don't want to waste it. So I think you got some good things in this poll. Is my reaction accurate?
Yeah, I think you're kind of stating it at the micro level. And, if you're in political science or polling or economics, I mean, if you have a systematic bias one way toward Democrats every time, that's not science, right? And so they're supposed to be objective. And those polls have been off, as you say, systematically toward Democrats every time coming out of a university setting. That's not a shocker. And so, what they don't report, and the Richmond Times-Dispatch today, mentions this poll and one other. The only ones they mention are the ones where the opponent is close. They don't mention that every other poll that's been out there has me up. And so that's kind of where you see the systematic bias in the polling and the reporting. They only do the horse race to write a good story. They don't say all the rest of the polls have had me up. And even the Spanberger camp, there's no internal polling they've ever reported. And believe me, they would love to say that, right? And so I don't buy it. Our numbers have it different. Our numbers have way more excitement on the Republican side than this Christopher Newport academic liberal poll has. And so I haven't seen those numbers before, and they're new to me. So I think I think we're going to be on a good track.
All right. Well, you got to get your people out, Dave. That's the bottom line.
Yep, you got it.
There's no question that Democrats in this cycle are very enthusiastic, and they are going to turn out, whether it's the 7th district or the 2nd or the 10th or Timbuktu, they're coming out. So Republicans, you got to get your base fired up. There's no doubt about it. Let's get to a couple issues here. I want to start with the horrific massacre on the synagogue, Congressman, on Saturday morning. This was an anti-Semitic hate crime. I mean, I kind of thought this country was beyond that. But, people going into worship and then, they get their heads blown off on a Saturday. What do we have to do in this country to get to a place where this kind of thing is just not commonplace?
Yeah. Well, first of all, our thoughts and prayers go out to all of our brothers and sisters in the Jewish community, in the faith community, and the Judeo-Christian tradition. I've always written for the past 20 years of my life. That's the utter foundation of Western civilization, and the rule of law and all the good we have comes out of that tradition. And so what we have to do is get back to our foundations and start teaching that tradition. The Judeo-Christian tradition is under attack now in K-12 schools and higher ed, in the culture, in the public square, in the press. And we're no longer talking about Abraham and Moses and God, right? And the Ten Commandments. And that's part of the problem. We're having a cultural breakdown because everyone says, let's unify. And no one can point to what you should unify around. I completely differ with that assessment. I think you have to unify around what made this country great, and that is the Judeo-Christian tradition. Our founders, if they made any mistake, and they didn't make many, they just absolutely assumed that Judeo-Christian tradition would be the utter ground and foundation for morality going forward. They just assumed that they wrote, this republic was founded on the assumption of a moral people. And if you don't teach those morals and values, which we're not doing, then it's very hard to unify. And everybody just says, let's unify around shared values or common values. Well, you've got to name them and put them on paper. And so that we have to do that. And so I urge everybody, calm everything down. Let's get back to human reason. Let's get back to the Judeo-Christian tradition, which has been synthesized with human reason through every great philosopher and theologian for the past thousands of years. And let's get back to the basics, and let's turn away from these new political tactics that are leading the country in the wrong direction.
Congressman, what did you think of Adam Schiff, one of your colleagues in the House, coming out on Sunday and blaming this on President Trump?
Well, I don't get into all that horse race stuff. I mean, I try to stay on message, but there's a reason they're doing that. I go to, like, The Hill this morning. They had the Hill newspaper.
Right.
They had a good headline, right? Democrat leaders are warning their party that they have no message. And one of the Democrat pollsters in the country said, we haven't had a real message since the last presidential election, so why change it now? And that's kind of biting sarcasm, right? He's telling their party, what in the world are we doing? We have no message going into an election. You got to give people a reason to vote for you, right? Not a reason to vote against someone else. And so that's the context for Schiff and the Democrats trying to get us off of policy issues. They don't have a party platform. Nationwide, the national mainstream media is going along with the Democrats on the total falsehood that Republicans did not vote for taking care of people with pre-existing conditions. That's the number one thing they're running on, and it's a total falsehood. We voted on the bill and passed it out of the House. And to try and overcome that fact, it's just overwhelming, right? And then I voted for tax cuts. Spanberger is against tax cuts, right? I want to strengthen the border. My opponent wants open borders. I want to get a market system where prices come down for health care. My opponent wants to socialize the whole health care system. And so that's why they have to change the topic. They cannot run on policy platform because we got it all. I can't think of one area of policy where we do not have a much better package. And just ask yourself, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Is the United States stronger? Are we better off? Is the economy booming? Is the unemployment rate for women and African Americans at its all-time historic low? Did we put $2,500 back in your pocket? Holy moly, what a contrast. And so that's the vote. In the end, I don't think this negative stuff goes through. I don't buy the polls. At the end of the day, the Virginians can see right through all the smoke. They know they're better off. They know their businesses are thriving, and I think we're going to have a good outcome.
Well, it all stops if the Democrats win. And your opponent, Abigail Spanberger, in a little bit of being duplicitous, she says, well, I'm not going to vote for Nancy Pelosi, but it doesn't matter because Pelosi is going to be the speaker because Pelosi has told all of her candidates, challengers, say what you want on the campaign trail. At the end of the day, I've got the votes. I'm speaker. But beyond that, if the Democrats take control, Adam Schiff becomes chairman of the House Intel Committee. He will subpoena everybody. All you're going to have is 18 months of constant investigations. Maxine Waters. That's right. Maxine Waters. That's right. California, the one that's telling everybody to do civil obedience and chase people, Republicans, out of subways and restaurants and harass their families. She's going to be chairperson of the Financial Service Committee. And it goes on from there. So this is just a reality, right?
Yeah,
Democrats take over. The Democrats take over. All hell's going to break loose. Nothing is going to get done. Your tax cuts are going to get repealed. Pelosi's going to be speaker. And that's the reality of it. So, people have to make a decision. And to sit there and say, well, I'm not going to vote for Pelosi, that is about the most duplicitous thing I've ever heard. She's going to be the speaker. It doesn't matter.
Right. And, I mean, she's taken over $500,000 from Pelosi, from Pelosi's PAC.
Exactly.
Right? So she says she doesn't take corporate PAC money. Where do you think Pelosi gets her money from? Right? So, I mean, the whole thing is just a falsehood. And then Spanberger's thesis statement from the beginning was she's going to, bring a new tone. She's brought a new tone of divisiveness to the 7th District that's never been here. just millions and millions and millions of dollars. Act Blue, $2 million, Pelosi PAC, $2 million, every leftist group you can name funding her. And she says she won't vote for Pelosi, and then the mainstream press will never follow up. Well, why is that? Because Pelosi's too conservative? You want to vote for someone more left, right, more in the resistance movement? And there's never a follow-up question. Or if the choice is between Pelosi and the Republican, will you then vote for the Republican since you promised that? And they're just simple follow-up questions, but the mainstream press won't ask the Democrats anything. And they're all in this time for the Democrats, and they should, there's almost some ethical, violations here in terms of services being provided by the press to candidates with no objectivity whatsoever.
Congressman, we got now upwards of 8,000 people in Mexico from South America in a caravan. They expect it to be 10,000 by the time it hits the U.S., bum rushing the border. Many Democrats are saying, hey, have a heart, let them in. It's all good. They want better jobs and a better life. However, when they step foot in the country, they break the law because they have no paperwork, so they're illegal, so they didn't go through the system. However, when the second foot steps in, then there's 3 other laws that protect them that basically say if they claim asylum, you can't throw them out. You have to process them. You can only hold them for 20 days. You can't separate their children after 20 days. Well, you can't process them, so they're simply released, and they disappear into the interior of the country. Some people say 10,000 today, 100,000 tomorrow. What is your position, Congressman, on the caravan?
Yeah, well, my position is that cannot happen. I've been one of the leaders on the Hill. By the day after we won my big election 4 years ago, there was a huge amnesty bill going through Congress, and it went down in flames the next day. And so my stands are fairly clear on it. The last segment, we're talking about Pelosi. My opponent in a commercial with Pelosi back in the primary, both of them together promoting a progressive agenda together. And that's what you're going to get, right, with the Democrats. My opponent doesn't want to say that in the 7th District, but she says everything except the main terms, right? She says just let everybody in. We got to have a legal pathway to as long as people work, et cetera. That means the caravan can come in. She's open borders. She won't say otherwise. She won't give an upper bound. She's for sanctuary cities, which is even worse. And she won't come out and say that. Instead, she phrases it in the negative. She says we shouldn't enforce federal law. Just let localities deal with caravans coming in to the country when under the Constitution, the federal government is given that specific authority. And so I don't think people get the severity of what she's actually saying there. She's not only saying don't follow federal law, she's saying let's ignore the law of the land. And she's running as a law enforcement candidate saying let's not follow the law of the land. And that's probably why I have the support of the Fraternal Order of Police down here. And if you go talk to the sheriffs, they're horrified, right? They have to deal with the massive inflow of drugs. 300 million lethal doses of fentanyl came across the border just this year. And then human trafficking, basically human slavery and prostitution combined into just a human evil that's coming through the border. And all of our sheriffs know about it, and now the people are starting to see the real impact. Most families have had to face a terrible scenario with a loved one with a drug addiction, opioid, heroin, fentanyl, et cetera, and it's spreading through the 7th District, and every sheriff will tell you that. And so you couldn't have a more stark comparison, right? The Democrats open border, and then who pays all the costs? Who pays education, emergency rooms, welfare support? The taxpayer does.
All right, so
the Democrats promote everybody to come in. They want to get more votes, and the American taxpayer pays the bill. And none of this should be construed as being anti-immigrant. We're a nation of immigrants. We have a legal system for 1 million immigrants per year. This country is a melting pot. All the people that want to come are all children of God, but it has to be done legally. The reason they're leaving Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador is because the rule of law has broken down. And if you look at the blue states, the people are moving from blue states to red states. The reason they're leaving blue states and blue cities like San Francisco and Chicago and New York is because crime is rampant in Democrat precincts. They are not good at rule of law. They say they are, and they're not. All the evidence shows It's very clear where people are moving. They're moving to red states. And then a lot of those folks from blue want to change the red states and turn them blue. So it makes no sense. I think the American people are starting to get a real handle on how all these things are hurting their lives, and they're demanding change.
So, Congressman, specifically, what should be done to stop the caravan? You say you want to stop it. What specifically should we do to stop it from entering the United States?
Yeah, well, like you said, the catch and release is incredibly problematic. Once you put 1 foot here, under U.S. law, you're given certain legal status, and so you got to keep that from happening. And so the president is doing the right thing, working with Mexico. That's the key, right? And Mexico has offered asylum. The folks that are coming are from Guatemala, Honduras, et cetera. So if they're really seeking asylum, you go to the first neighboring country, which is Mexico. That should solve the problem. But the folks are saying, right, and they've been interviewed, no, we want jobs. Well, jobs is not asylum, right? Asylum is when you're fleeing political harm or repression from your government. And so we've got to get it straight. I think the White House is on this, and we need to change the law. And this will, again, show the American people. Can you imagine if you say yes to the caravan, you're sending a message to 8 billion more people on the planet that, hey, the United States has a generous welfare state. All you got to do is get the caravan and ignore the rule of law. Commandeer highways through Mexico, ignore the rule of law there, barge into the U.S., and you get all the the welfare programs, education, free emergency room, everything, and their taxpayers are going to pay for it. And it's that simple. The American people have to reject that, or we'll lose the rule of law in this country.
We're out of time. I want to thank Congressman Dave Brat for being with us. More information, go to davebrat.com, davebrat.com. Congressman, thank you for being with us. Really appreciate it.
John.